maybe wait 1 more minute before we open the lobby. Okay, great, Linnea, thank you very much. Maybe we can now open the lobby and welcome participants to this webinar. Good afternoon all, and thank you very much for joining us for this high-level construction forum webinar on BIM, so that's Building Information Modeling and Public Procurement, 2 allies. We do indeed have 2 allies with us today because this is a unique webinar with 2 co-chairs from 2 different units in DG Grow. So from Unit H1, overseeing the transition of the construction ecosystem, being co-chaired by Electra Papadaki, but also from Unit C2, which is overseeing public procurement. And this session will be moderated or co-chaired by Ivo Locatelli. Before we start today's session, I have a few housekeeping rules for you. The first is that please remember this session is recorded, so please turn off your microphone and your camera. And for this session, please refrain from raising your virtual hand. We instead encourage you to leave your questions and your comments in the chat. And please also remember to take to leave the name also of the speaker you'd like to point your questions or comments to. So with that, I invite you to enjoy today's session, and I pass the floor over now to Electra Papadaki for your opening remarks, but also for the co-chairing of the remainder of this session.
Thank you very much, Clara. From my side also, I'm very happy to welcome you today in our webinar, BIM and Public Procurement, 2 allies. As said, we are very happy to invite you in the session that we're hosting together with the Public Procurement Unit in our DG Grow. And I will be moderating together with my very good colleague, Ivo Locatelli, Senior Expert for Public Procurement. This webinar is an opportunity for us to bring together today 2 communities. From one side, the construction community of the High Level Construction Forum, and from the other side, the public procurement community. These are 2 communities that we really believe that can be allies to each other. From one side, we have public procurement that can help accelerate the adoption of digital collaboration methods, technologies and tools, and overall innovation and competitiveness in the construction industry. And from the other side, we have BIM that can be a service to public procurement, that can help to achieve transparency and trust and resource savings. BIM and public procurement are also important because the public sector needs to lead by example when it comes to digital transition and not only. Otherwise, it's not only that it cannot steer competitiveness and innovation in industry, but that can even hinder it. Since the Public Procurement Directive of 2014, we have seen countries taking different paths on implementing BIM. From our side as the European Commission, we have worked very closely with member states to co-develop and propose tools like the cost-benefit analysis and methodology that helps procurers measure costs and benefits when they're procuring for construction. We have also helped organize trainings in member state level for public administrators, and we have also given some overall directions and methodological guidelines for the implementation of BIM with the European BIM Handbook. Additionally, there has been support to member states individually for them to develop national strategies along these lines. There we find the technical support instrument and the work of the colleagues in DG Reform. and very successful examples of projects in countries such as Lithuania, Spain, Poland, Greece, and Estonia. We have also seen that countries commit on using BIM in the public procurement and beyond through references in the national recovery and reform plans. From our side, we are committed to continue supporting these two communities, and we will have presentations today on ways to promote better good practices, but also steer countries to take the next steps for the integration of BIM in public procurement. And most importantly, and the reason that we call you here today, we will announce the community platform under the Big Buyers Initiative that will be launched in February, dedicated to BIM. And before we launch it, we are very happy to be here with you and discuss it. My colleagues will present to you this initiative, and then we will have two panel discussions where we will hear first the expectations and needs of public buyers, and on the other side, the expectations and needs of contractors and of the private sector. Without waiting any longer, I would like now to give the floor to Anita Purt. She is policy analyst in DigiGrow's Public Procurement Unit, and Anita will present us the digital big buyers community. Anita, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Anita Port. I work in the team of EVO, and I have today the pleasure to inform you of about one of our projects that we're running, and that is called the Digital Public Buyers Community. Next slide, please. So currently the planning of this digital space is good on track. The environment is designed, and soon by the end of this year it will be opened for the so-called beta testing that will, together with users of the platform, we will test it. And then with that feedback, we hope to go live on end of February next year. Then the contract for the platform will last for 4 years, so it will be in the air for 4 years. And by the time we reach the last year, we will evaluate the performance of this platform and how it contributes to European community on public procurement. Next slide, please. So now I will just give you a general overview on the objectives of the platform. We started this project as we wanted to be a distributive network on public procurement for public buyers among each other, but also for public buyers to connect with the Commission. And the objective is to use collective intelligence and team up for joint actions on the topic of public procurement on an EU level where it's really necessary. The way we foresee to do this is through so-called communities of practice. Next slide, please. Another important objective of the platform is that it will be Commission's main channel for communications on tools, trainings and events and webinars on the topic of procurement that are available. The Commission develops these tools, and this platform can also make it very much accessible to the procurement audience. A third reason is that this platform is meant to connect also public procurers to other relevant forums and initiatives from the European Commission. And you see the first results of today is that we connect to the construction community today. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview on the communities which we will be go live with, I will just go shortly through them. We will host the so-called big buyer groups that are groups that focus on buying a certain category. We just finished a project where we developed 4, and the project will be scaled up next year till 10 groups. There will be a community on buying AI, for example, where AI clauses will be developed that are aligned with the upcoming legal framework of AI. There is a network of central purchasing bodies in Europe that will be hosted on the platform. We have a training program for staff working for these organizations. They have an alumni network, and they will be also hosted on the platform to be able to keep contact with each other about the issues and the training topics. Another community is on the buying of sustainable solar panels, which will be aligned with the Solar Alliance that will be launched soon. And then the topic of today, building information modeling in public procurement. Peter will guide you through this community and what will be done in this community. Then we have the legal review bodies network in Eastern Europe that want to exchange information. And there is a community of European network of competence centers, the former Procure to Innovate network. And they will focus on a solution where the national challenge platforms could be aligned in a more European network. Next slide, please. So just to give you quick impressions of how it looks like today, of course, it will be further developed. Next slide, please. Here you see the website, and that is accessible to all. You see a little login sign where you can log in with your ACAS, and that will lead you to a so-called forum where all public buyers in Europe can have discussions on certain topics. Next slide, please. But in the third layer, so the first layer is a public layer. The second layer you can enter as soon as you're logged in with ACAS and you created a member profile. The third layer are the communities. The communities decide what are the play rules and who can enter it. And then it will have a visual which you can click on. And of course, one of these tiles will be dedicated to BIM. Next slide, please. You can find members with the same interest on the platform. There will be also a map which shows you the geographical spread where your peers are in Europe. Next slide, please. And here you see, for example, a mock-up of discussions, how they will be organized, who take parts in the discussions, and you can launch a discussion yourself. Next slide, please. So this was my very short introduction to the digital public bias community. And I don't know if I should hand over back to Electra or directly to my colleague Peter, who will tell you more about the content on the specific community on BIM, but I will give back the floor anyway. I don't know exactly to who. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita, for the presentation. It is really great to see how you're offering the tools to enable better collaboration, digitally enabled collaboration. We will hear now specifically on construction and BIM about the upcoming work that is being prepared to promote good practices and develop tools for policymakers by Peter Stalens, who is policy officer in our unit, the construction unit of DigiGrow. Peter, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Electra, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm indeed Peter Stalens from DigiGrow. I'm acting a bit here as Anita's counterpart on this project from the construction unit at DigiGrow. So next slide, please. So first on this slide, I shamelessly copied a slide from Anita on the planning, just adding simply one red circle to show where we are now. And what we are doing today is actually a part of this. We are building and developing the specific community on BIM in public procurement, one of the communities that Anita just mentioned. It is also good to know that we have a rather wide target public for this community. In fact, all teams actually procuring services for construction and construction projects on a national, regional, or local level. So all kind of public bodies and other institutions, also potentially including other organizations that are not necessarily public bodies themselves, but who work on the side of public procurement of construction projects. Next slide, please. So part of this community building is defining and assigning certain roles for the community, already as mentioned by Anita. So in this case, DG Grow acts as the platform owner and will appoint community leaders and community managers. But the idea is very much that the platform will be largely self-governing. So we have the contractor Intrasoft who will continue doing the technical management of the platforms for quite some time to come. And then we look for the specific roles of community leader and community manager to be taken up. These will roles for people who will lead a community to certain outcomes and will do some off and online management of the community. And as the platform grows, we can appoint some topic managers to manage some specific topics. And moderation will also be needed on the documents, all documents to be uploaded or on all other material and inputs that are being put on the platform. Next slide, please. So now just a few words on the substance of the community. The idea is that the community will provide tools such as, for example, the tool included in the picture, which is the cost benefits calculation tool. The idea is also that it will give an overview of strategies followed by authorities on, for example, national or regional level, that it will be a repository also for many cases and best practices about the use of BIM in public procurement. The idea is also that certain activities in the field of BIM and public procurement can be shared, or that, for example, experts can be asked or sourced through the network to participate in these activities. Furthermore, there will also be a place for news items and for questions, for making contacts, and so on. It is also very much possible that more substance will follow while further creating the roadmap for this community. And in any case, we will be starting a project in a matter of days, even a project that is called Digitalization of the Built Environment, that will provide quite some suitable inputs also for this community, such as, for example, a matrix categorization of the uptake of BIM in public procurement by member states. I will say an extra word on that in a few seconds. Very important is that stakeholders are already very much welcomed to provide inputs, and also here. When we think about the input, certainly moderation and management will be needed. So something that I already mentioned on the previous slide. Next slide, please. So on the benefits of the community, we suppose, and of course we also hope, that the benefits of the community will be manifold and that it will be a very positive experience to be part of this community. Some of the benefits are also already mentioned by Anita, and some of the benefits we think of are that the community will provide an overview of documents, so that would be a clear overview, clear repository for all kinds of documents, but also very importantly that it will provide reachability and accessibility towards a network of people with opportunity to learn from each other, to have discussions among peers, for example, but also, for example, to invite experts for activities and so on. And also for us, there might be some, for us from the side of the Commission, might be some benefits, because we think of it possibly also as a tool to reach out to stakeholders on this very specific topic. And we hope that it also will allow us to have the substance, for example, to also make the connections to other DGs where this would be needed. Next slide, please. So as I just said, I'm going to give a few extra words on this soon to be started initiative on digitalization of the built environment. This is an initiative that will take us 18 months, so it will take us well into 2024. It will have a substantial part. It will have a full work package on digitalization of building permits. It will have a work package on further paving the way towards an EU data space. But most importantly, and most relevant for today, is that it will have a substantial part on BIM, where more details about this work package can be found in the box on this slide. I'm not going through all of them, but you can have a look. So these are all different tasks that are going to be done within the framework of this project that will start in a matter of days. Next slide, please. But most importantly, part of this project will be that it will also support the setup and the building of this community of practice of BIM and public procurements with some specific tasks in the development of this community. So a few of the tasks that will be executed are, for example, to do a scan of the field of public buyers, for example. Also, not only public buyers, but also other authorities and relevant organization. Another task will be further raising awareness about the launch of this community, further stakeholder engagement, so what we are doing today, but then of course further continued. Also with a view very specifically to identify parties willing to take up a further specific role within the community. And also the contractor will propose a more detailed roadmap about what and when certain deliverables or goals are to be achieved by the community. So we want to give a clear message here that we see the potential of BIM and public procurement to go further than just increasing transparency. The idea is also very much that BIM and public procurement should also contribute to the green transition of construction. So next slide, please. So this is the last slide. So simply summarizing and in conclusion, a more detailed community roadmap is in preparation. It will provide clearer and better defined objectives and deliverables. But foremost, this is a very warm call for your collaboration. So please do reach out to us in case you think of documents and tools to be included. If you have a proposal to participate or take on a certain role in the community, if you have any other idea or input, any use cases, type of ideas about type of stakeholders to include, please let us know. So for now, you can reach out to the high-level construction forum contacts, but we will also update you from the time that the secretariat, the real secretariat for this community is in place. So with this call for collaboration, I would like to give the floor back, but please do let me know also in case there would be any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter and Anita. I believe it was clear to everyone that really this is a call for collaboration, a call for ideas. Feel free to write to us, to raise your hands. We want to test these ideas with you. And saying that, I am passing now the floor to Ivo to start with the first panel. Ivo, please, over to you.
Many thanks, Electra, and good afternoon to everybody. So we start with this first panel with the three excellent speakers. I will start by introducing them. I will start first with introducing Jan Saar, who has a significant experience in IT and construction industry. He also joined the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications in 2018. He's currently working on developing the e-construction platform, which will provide the backbone for data sharing throughout the building life cycles and the national digital twin. He's also deputy chair of the UBIM task group and a member of Building Smart Board of Directors. The second very distinguished speaker is Miss Elena Contu. Milena is the first secretary of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport and chair of the steering committee for the development of national BIM strategy in Greece. She has many years of experience in the development and implementation of public projects in Greece, and she has been actively supporting the strategic planning and digital reform of the ministry. Our third speaker is Jocelyn Birlin, and is a manager of BIM and configuration management at Société du Grand Paris. He's in charge of the deployment of the data management for the new line of the Parisian Metro, Line 15 South, and he aims to promote interoperability in order to develop the use of BIM by public buyers and also by public owners in the long term. I will ask each panelist for a very short introduction on their main experience in using BIM at the national, EU or local level. And I will start by asking Jan Saar to do this. Interventions should be short and to the point and not longer than 4 minutes. Many thanks.
Hi, I hope you can all hear me. All right.
All perfect.
Great. Thank you, Ivo, for the introduction, and Electra for hosting this event. And as already mentioned, I'm from Estonia. I'm working for the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications, but here I'm in the role of representing the EU BIM task group. And the EU BIM task group as a background is, well, it sounds a little bit similar like what BIM for public buyers is going to be like, or we have a lot of connections. So we are a group of public clients who are interested in digitizing the industry, in using BIM in the procurement, and it all starts from the clients really. So I really welcome this this initiative from the European Commission on this level. And in Estonia, we don't have a specific BIM mandate, for example. Instead, we are kind of trying to nudging approach of getting, first of all, public clients to use BIM. We have a lot of great public clients. The biggest ones are already using BIM quite extensively. And we are also working on the technology side. We have a digital permit system. We're now converting that to a BIM-based permit system, and that's where I really see the biggest benefits coming from. But we need to pool together our resources as much as possible, learn from each other, and I hope this this forum will be a great place for that. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jan, for being concise and clear. I will pass the floor to Milena.
Hello, can you hear me now? Is that okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm happy to participate in this excellent event. I'm Milena Kondu. I have been dealing with the procurement and execution of public projects for many years. On behalf of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transform in Greece, I would like to thank the European Union and DG Reform for the great opportunity they are giving Greece to develop a national strategic plan and a roadmap for the implementation of BIM. Recently, more and more public sectors like us have been paying close attention to save cost and at the same time improve efficiency in public works. The construction industry has a relevant annual turnover, which represents an important part of the GDP in Greece and concerns in a large part the public sector. It is obvious that there is a great need to adopt new strategies like BIM, which forces all the parties involved in the process to adopt a collaborative approach, reducing insufficiencies in order to improve the current conditions. The implementation of BIM Greece is still at early stages, even if software vendors are already offering BIM solutions. Some general contractors are adopting it in private projects, and some pilot projects of public authorities are going on, like the extension of Metro line in Athens. In the direction of approving a national strategy for the implementation of BIM, the project which is being implemented in collaboration with DG Reform is named Deployment of National Strategic Plan and Roadmap for the Delivery and Management of Infrastructures with BIM. The key initiatives recommended include the development of the National BIM Initiative Implementation Plan, which requires execution project work programs related to procurement, of course, national BIM guidelines, education, product data and BIM libraries, process and data exchange, regulatory framework and pilot projects. Also, establish a task force with key stakeholder representation to manage a 5-year program for the delivery of the National BIM Initiative Implementation Plan. The analysis of best practices conducted during this project, the analysis of the current state of the construction sector, as well as the consultations with key stakeholders of the project, led to the development of the National Strategic Plan. These 10 strategic actions are further specified in 28 strategic interventions, which are thoroughly analyzed, establishing the BIM roadmap. I can mention some of the interventions that I consider to be of immediate priority, such as tender BIM pilot projects as public works, minimum skills requirements, technological, knowledge-based of contractors for the implementation of public projects, creating a platform blueprint for the construction sector, legislative amendments, and so on. Adoption of BIM guidance documents with basic information is extinguished part of this project, and we hopefully believe that the roadmap is the first government move towards the mandatory implementation of BIM to improve the value and the cost of public works. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Milena. This is very, very interesting, and it also shows the important progress which is happening, it is underway in Greece. So this is really very interesting for all of us, given also the work, the objective that we have in really promoting the use of BIM in public procurement. I will now pass the floor to Jocelyn for his introduction.
Hi everyone. So thank you for this invitation at the European Commission. I'm Jocelyn Birling. I'm working in the Société du Grand Paris, and we are now building a new metro line all around Paris. And it's composed of 4 new metro line and around 200 kilometers of track and 68 train station. And we are doing all these projects with the use of BIM. And we have now digitalized all the buildings that we are going to construct, and we are constructing right now in Paris. So I was willing to focus on our main use case of the BIM to at least present a little fraction of what we are doing. And so for us right now, the main use case of the BIM is to produce the drawing. And so we have a uniform database of all the drawings. So the drawing and the model is the same. And I think it's the most important use case of the BIM right now. And so we can be confident of the use of the model that we are now gathering all around the construction. That's it for me. Thank you for presence.
Thanks a lot, Jocelyn. Now let's come with the real panel discussion, and of course I have to bring the discussion a little bit towards public procurement, which for many of you can be a bit of a boring subject, but you will see that it's also can be very interesting if we look at it together with BIM. The first introductory question I would ask is, what is your current practice regarding the structure and the organization of data in a call for tender in which your administration requires the use of BIM? I will ask the question first in the following order. First, Jan, second, Milena, and then Jocelyn. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivo. Great question. What I can speak about is, of course, in Estonia, what we do is, and I think in many other countries as well, a lot of Nordic countries, the most important aspect when it comes to public clients asking for BIM in their calls for tender is to use open BIM. And I hope most of our viewers, listeners here are aware of what is open BIM, but it's a way to use BIM in an open format. So that includes file formats, but also it includes processes and then some tools as well. So that information is more easily shared, it's accessible, it's archivable. And this is, I think, one of the most, or the most important aspect that we should focus on first, is to make sure that whenever something is publicly procured, it is procured in an open way. And Open BIM is definitely one way to do that. And from the EU BIM task group, we also sent a position paper to the European Commission recommending that Open BIM be more included in the Public Procurement Directive and raising attention and focus on this topic. Because technically speaking, we can go into a lot of details on what are the information requirements, employer information requirements, etc., what are the levels of details and so forth. And this is something in the end up to each procurer to decide for themselves what are they going to do with the data, how granular or detailed they want to be. But what I think is something that we need to make clear to every public procurer is that when you're asking to do anything in BIM, it must be in Open BIM, in open formats. So that's my short answer.
Excellent. So Milena, the floor is yours.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Locatelli. So that's a very interesting question. If we focus to the advantages of using BIM, that is reduced cost, risk and time in design, construction and operation of a facility, better final contact thanks to better design and construction, potential for high whole life value in the built environment. In fact, from these advantages of using BIM, we can see the opportunity to name the BIM model as based on the generation of a model which can be defined as a single source of truth for all stakeholders. So the first thing that this requires the culture change and training. BIM-based working changes are mostly cultural because harmony and collaboration among players who mostly in the past were rivals now are needed to be together. However, the construction industry is difficult to change due to the strong inertia towards renovation, and this is a limitation because the stakeholders usually prefer to continue their habits instead of trying to improve the process. Even if training efforts require time, human resources, and cost, they should be done to support the BIM development. These benefits of innovation such as BIM only become feasible and realizable when their legal frameworks are clear and implementable. BIM needs a new kind of contracts and insurance forms to protect us, authorities, and all parties involved. Indeed, the adoption of a collaborative form of contract is one of the fundamental steps for an effective BIM. There is no clear regulation related to participant roles, responsibilities, and authorities, to intellectual property rights, or to fair practice for electronic information documentation. Although in the European directives 24 and 25 on public procurement, these are adopted in Greek framework, they are not fully implemented still, and as digital transformation consists of a challenge in the current legislation for BIM adoption, no further instructions and templates have been issued on how BIM can be applied in practice. What we have usually in Greece? Usually in Greece, design and construction are separated. The overall period of design and construction is generally longer than the one required for other procedure methods, and it may make the total project price higher, much higher. In the tender documentation, the design teams usually include fewer details in the drawings, or they specify that it's not possible to rely on the dimensional accuracy of their drawings to avoid possible liability. For this reason, there are many disputes with the contractor, and most of the fabrication and construction takes place on site. Before the construction phase, the winner prepares accurate drawings called shop drawings. If they are based on wrong or inaccurate drawings, it is possible to have extra cost during the construction phase. During the construction phase, many changes are made for different reasons. For example, presence of errors, omissions, and so on. And for each of them, there is a specific procedure to follow, which often involves legal disputes, added costs, and delays. Therefore, usually contractor offers too low bids to win the tender, and after that, they try to regain money, abusing of the change of process. Therefore, there are several disputes between the authority and the contractor. Big efforts to adopt in a correct way all information for the facility management provided to the owner after the construction phase. So we need new procurement methods. What do we have in the directives? Tender specification preparation, invitation to the tender, submission of the tender documents by the bidders, evaluation of the proposals, and tender awarding. So we need, first of all, technical specifications for using BIM in public construction projects, and a single standard should be agreed by the industry construction to give instructions on its application in usage. And of course, European BIM guidelines are required, common European guidelines, common. Another challenge is checking of competencies and maturity. Due to the novelty of BIM, standards are needed to measure and control the competence of firms and teams. Without an appropriate check, a wrong adoption of BIM could ruin its reputation. Review of cost and benefit distribution is needed. In Greece, the calculation of costs is usually made and based on fixed prices of a budget on the design phase. Anyway, the compensation levels and payments need to be reset in compliance with the new approach. Other challenges we have is the gap on the provision of collaborative workings and data sharing, the need of the development of cloud computing, and the development of software applications and tools which are needed. The improvement of technology, usually BIM files, have a large size and it is not simple to share and store them. Moreover, it is fundamental to protect and access the database in real time. For this reason, developments in speed broadband internet and computer technology are needed. Definition of the BIM owner and the supervisor for quality, and so on. Finally, we need integrated model delivery. Usually, several models are created for different purposes, reducing the benefits of an integrated BIM process. For this reason, more effort should be made to include the requirements of different analyses in a single integrated model delivery. Thank you.
Many thanks, Milena. I see that there is a first question which is raised in the chat. I invite really all the participants to post questions in the chat so that we can ask them to our panelists. I will pass the floor now to Jocelyn to answer to my initial question, which is basically what is your current practice regarding the structure and the organization of data in a call for tender in which your administration requires the use of BIM. Go ahead, Jocelyn.
Yes, I'm going to kind of repeat myself with Jan earlier. I would also focus on the use of OpenBIM and the IFC. It's very important and it's the main needs right now of the project. Just to make it a little bit more practical, we have right now in the project 1,200 models, and all of them are in the EFC, but we have many softwares that are producing the data, so it's very important that we have one common structure way to store it. In the need to structure that data is very important, and so we would need to have a level of information need at every stages in order to be able to share it and to understand what we are getting and what we will get in the future in terms of data and in terms of information. I think right now we are producing all that data in a kind of selfish way. So we produce BIM model for ourselves, and we need to switch to get to the generous BIMs in order to collaborate. So to produce all the data, to share it with everyone and to collaborate with everyone else. So that's, I would say, the main thing to retain from BIM. I would say open BIM and collaboration and data structuration.
Many thanks, Jocelyn. So we got the first question from the chat. I maybe start this time the round from yourself. The question which was posted by Domenico Campogrande is how to foster the use and implementation of BIM in public procurement by small local authorities for smaller contracts. What would be your views about this?
I'm pretty sure we can do BIM with small authorities and smaller contracts. We can adapt the process to everyone. We will not ask the same thing for the painter in our building as for the. We do not have the same requirements for the painter or for the subway system, automatic system. So we will adapt and we will say, okay, you are not going to model the paint. That kind of obvious. So maybe you can just produce an Excel with some data and some structured data that we can integrate on the model. So it's a question of what do we need and who is going to produce that data. But I'm pretty sure everyone is able to produce some Excel. That kind of easy to integrate to other model.
Okay, many thanks for your very clear answer. I see that there also is another interesting question from Ms. Mariani from Building Smart France. First is how the community of practice can help to the uptake of tools, methods, mentality shift, which is very much needed. And it also, Milena, for example, spoke very clearly about the need of cultural change. So the question is basically how the uptake of tools and methods can help and how the community of practice can have a role in this respect. Maybe I turn the questions to Jan. How would you answer to this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good comment I see on the chat there, and one critical aspect there is to mentioning that 90% of procurement in the EU is still done on price, and this is a good question on two fronts, because first of all it comes back to the methods of procurement, which are not actually related to that much technology and BIM, but about the way we procure. And this was also emphasized by Milena. She mentioned that the procurement is done the design first, and then you do the contracting, and this is always a hassle. And that's why it's not only about the technology, about BIM, which makes it more transparent, easy to share information, but we also need to look at the way we procure and the way procurement is handled overall legally in terms of contracts. And here, one solution we are looking at in Estonia is a new type of contracting form, which is called an alliance contract. It's coming from Finland, and I'm sure in the next panel, Annina Lehikoinen from Finland can explain a lot more about it, or maybe she can comment on it, because Finland is one of the leading countries in the world adopting this type of new form of procurement. Which means that you bring together an alliance team, and you have one contract between the designer, between the contractor, between the client, also the user maybe. And any other parties you also want to involve in the successful delivery of the project. So it's really a collaborative form of delivering a project, and it's not, you know, based on price and cost anymore. It's based on, you know, the outcome, the quality, and the team collaboration. And you know, Finland has really spearheaded this type of collaboration in Europe, and Estonia is following. We're having our first projects on this as well. And of course, BIM is vital for that, because you need to share information very openly, very collaboratively. And this is why we need BIM technologies to help us. But in the end, it comes down to how we define the legal contracts for the procurement. And in Australia, for example, they're actually doing these types of contracts without actually naming the price at all. So they sign the contract without the price, because they know, kind of, the client knows what their limitations are, and they want the help of the designer, the architect, the engineers, the contractors, to figure out what is the best we can achieve with this, with these limitations we have. We have the site, we have the money. What is the best outcome for this? And it's no longer, you know, each party, each stakeholder really looking for their own profit, their own gain, because the profits are fixed in the contract. Everybody needs, you know, to earn money. I mean, that's the fundamental reason why we make businesses. But we shouldn't be earning money at someone else's expense. So we make it open. Open books are part of that contract as well. And this is maybe something we also need to take into account and look at more closely within this forum. Not, you know, just BIM, but also the contract methods in more general terms.
Very good, excellent, Jan. This really shows how the two communities needs to talk together, because there is indeed the BIM dimension, and there is at the same time also the contractual part, which relates more to the procurement part. I would like maybe pass the next question to Milena, which is about what could be the basic steps towards implementing the required cultural change among all the key players.
Thank you very much.
I think it's a very interesting question, and it really refers to your introduction.
Okay. Through frequent consultations with the majority of the representatives of the construction sector and academia, we have concluded that it is of great importance to promote BIM and its benefits as a priority to prioritize BIM trainings. Raising campaigns in order to make a difference regarding the adoption of BIM as proposed. Public procurement is a recommended powerful tool that will help towards this direction. Of course, with analogic financing these procedures. The EU directive will an important push to reform the EU members' public construction procurement. BIM adoption is limited in the construction industry, mostly due to lack of BIM demand by clients who cannot recognize its importance. The first change in the public sector is to include in the tender documents a project delivery method. This is my point of view, such as integrated project delivery, adopting a BIM protocol. Educate, of course, stakeholders which play a key role as an intermediate of introduction concepts of BIM and project delivery methods, such as this integrated project delivery into the context of renovation projects within the construction industry in member states. Following should be considerably to graduate mandate the utilization of BIM in public construction projects prior to fully mandating BIM in all public projects, as described in several best practices. Indeed, all construction projects from 5 million and all new constructions and renovation over 2.5 million must be recommended to develop a building information model. This is to improve the overall process. A list of BIM projects should be done to create good practices knowledge, as this excellent platform that you're doing next year. And of course, European guidelines and standards for engineers of all member states, which shall be used by all the parties involved to provide a project design in BIM, which will describe the processes, the procedures and requirements that shall be followed for the preparation and submission of BIM models. That's my point. Of course, communication plans and training programs and financing pre-training programs is on the table. And we think of doing some planning of establishing BIM regional hubs for professionals operating in regional areas of the country to promote, guide, and support the professionals of smaller enterprises of the construction sector towards the upcoming digital information. Thank you.
Many thanks, Milena. I invite really the panelists to be short and to the point because we got many questions. The next one is again for Jocelyn. There is a question directly addressed to you. Is the SGP using the national CROI, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, collaboration platform as a CDA platform, or is it using another? This looks like a very technical questions. I hope you are you got the point.
Yes, I get the point.
I don't.
Yes, we are using Croquis in French, I would say, as a collaboration platform, but we do not have only one tool to share the data. We have many tools because we have many stakeholders, and everyone is using the tools that is best suited for everyone. So right now, Croquis is our good tool because it's easy to use mainly. It's easy to share the data and it's easy to collaborate with everyone, and that's the main use case with that platform for us. We have several other platforms to share data and to validate data and to validate all the models that we are having every day.
Many thanks, and many thanks for being concise. There is one upper question which was also raised and which I found interesting, and I am addressing this to Jan. How are you using methods, for example, BIM on your part, to accelerate the uptake of the ecological KPIs?
Another good question. Sustainability, CO2, ecological KPIs. I assume it's more or less the same topic, what they mean with ecological KPIs. The best answer is that when we use BIM, when we use digital tools, when we in more detail think through what we are going to build, what we want to achieve by building it first digitally, we can simulate, we can analyze, and we can optimize the use of resources, the use of space, and then to really create the best possible living environment or working environment for the assets that we are creating. And that's, I think, the best way we can address these ecological KPIs and reducing the huge amounts of CO2 that are going into the built environment. And there's a lot of inefficiency, a lot of waste in the construction process as well. But by doing it digitally first, we can optimize it, we can reduce waste, and we can save a lot of resources. And we can, we can play around in the digital model about using, what if we replace one material with another, which is maybe more greener? What if we build more in timber, for example? And this is, I think, one of the important aspects as well, that in Estonia, we're using a lot of timber for construction. And I mean, that's very CO2 friendly when compared to concrete, steel. So but all of them have their own pros and cons. It's just about finding the right balance of what we want to achieve. And we can really do this first digitally, collaboratively, before any of the resources are put into actual production, before any resources are wasted. And this is, yeah, I think the best way we can do it.
Thanks. We don't have much time left, but Jocelyn wanted to comment on this question. Please be short, Jocelyn.
Yes, this question is very interesting, and I'm convinced that BIM has a use to conceive easier building and buildings that are easier to maintain. And I'm pretty sure we can do a complex conception, but at the end we have a low-tech building that will be useful for 100 years and as well low in CO2 and has a low impact on the environment.
Excellent. We got 1 last minute to discuss. Maybe I'll ask this very quick question and I hope to get a very short answer. So from a traditional construction company, is there any research showing what is the cost, CapEx, OpEx, in order to adopt and use BIM efficiently? I turn this to Milena. She takes her.
The experience up to now is that the cost is double. The design cost is double.
In which of the two cases?
If you use BIM from the beginning, within the designing teams, the cost of the design is double. Is that okay with you?
Ivo, can I add comment
Please,
to that?
go
as
ahead.
Well?
Go ahead.
I think, Milena, you're absolutely right. For somebody starting off, at first, there is a learning curve. With every new tool, with every new method, it will be a bit more expensive at first. But as the industry evolves, as you get used to it, as you build your processes around these new tools, you will quickly discover that it actually gets a lot cheaper. And although there's a learning curve at first and an increase in price, which might put off some people looking at it, but at the BIM task group, we did this, it was already mentioned, the cost benefit analysis tool that anyone can use any of their projects, input them into this Excel tool and see, numerical values and results of what could be the gain and the benefit of using BIM. And in Estonia, also, some very small companies design companies are using BIM for very small designs, even if the contractor or the client is not asking for it, because it's much quicker and easier for them to build a quick model in Revit or ArcCAD or whatever tool, and then output also the 2D drawings from this model. And any changes you make are a lot more faster, because if you have a traditional way, if you have, a bunch of drawings everywhere, and then you have a big change and you have to update all the drawings, it could be just a small parametrical change in a BIM model, and all the drawings are automatically updated. So I agree with you, Milena, that there is a first upfront cost is a bit higher, but as you get used to it, as you adopt it, you'll quickly realize that it gets much, much cheaper. And I don't know any design firm that has adopted BIM and then said, well, it's not for us, we'll go back to the old ways. None of them do. So I think that speaks for itself.
So many thanks to all the speakers, also for their very lively participation. I know that they wanted to continue discussing, but time is running and I have to pass back the floor to Electra for the second panel. And I'm sure that this just shows there are so many questions that there is a big need to discuss and to discuss this, for example, through our platform. Many thanks to our speakers, and Electra, the floor is back to you.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Indeed, a very interesting discussion, and I hope we will have one more very interesting discussion. In this panel, we will see the other side, what are the needs and the perspective of contractors and the private sector. And for this reason, I am very happy to introduce you to 3 amazing speakers that I invite them to turn on their camera already. So today with us, we have Fernando Silcos Jimenez From the European Builders Confederation, EBC, Fernando is the Secretary General. He's also very active on the European Economic and Social Committee, and he's also a board member of Small Business Standards. He's the voice of construction SMEs and micro enterprises, and he's promoting their interests very actively in the European level, meaning also participating in European dialogue and projects such as Build for People. We also have together with us Anina Leikoinen, who is representing Building Smart. She's the manager of Building Smart Finland and also CEO of Building Information Model. Anina is both a civil engineer and an architect. And apart from bringing us the perspective of the private sector, she has an interesting background of also having served in the city of Helsinki as project manager. So she knows a little bit the challenges of public organizations. And last but not least, certainly, we have Sue Arundel. She is the Director General of the European Federation of Engineering Consultancy Associations. Sue is in the European bubble, if I may say, of construction for many years. She's very experienced. She was in FIEC for several years and also in the European Council for Construction Research. And we are looking forward to hear her views that, as I said, come from many years of experience. So I will start with you, Sue. And as an opening statement, I want to ask you. So we spoke about BIM and procurement. What does it mean to you and what does it mean to EFCA? Many people in the comments asked us to calculate and see if it's really beneficial for the private sector and construction companies. Do you think it's beneficial for EFCA?
Well, absolutely. And thank you for that introduction and thank you for inviting me today. So to start with, engineers like complexity and they drive innovation. And consulting engineering firms are already using BIM. And EFCA actually supports the requirement for BIM in public contracts for technical design services, for construction, and for infrastructure projects. And the potential benefits are huge for the design, for the construction, for the use phase, but also for the deconstruction at the end of the life cycle. Now, consulting engineers can provide BIM-based solutions, but the big question is it useful for the project? Is it affordable for the project? And overall, is it cost effective? And I want to give you a couple of examples. Renovation, for example. Usually in a renovation project, there is no digital twin or 3D model. And the cost of scanning everything and creating a digital twin is probably going to be prohibitive because that's going to be a huge part of the cost. Similarly, with a small project, it's the same challenge, and we need to look at what the project is and whether BIM is actually useful. Because in the end, we can give public buyers what they want, but public buyers need to know why they want BIM and what they want to do with it. Because it's not just for the actual project and the design and construction phase, but what do you want to do with it afterwards, throughout the entire life cycle? And in particular, one very important question for us, which echoes what Jan Saar said in the previous panel, which is what do you want to do with the data?
Very good. Thank you very much, Sue. Fernando, if I may, I would like to ask the same question for you. How does EBC see BIM and public procurement?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. Indeed, this is a huge topic, and I will start with some reflection about public procurement, and then I will go to the digitalization part. So what we know is now that public procurement means a substantial part of public investment in the European economy. So, but what we also know is that the reality of public procurement right now is that there are increasingly few bidders. Contract cancellations due to a lack of bidders, single bidder contracts, so we see a decline in competition. We think that, of course, many elements are influencing that process, but two of them are the difficulty of setting up an offer and also the difficulty for, let's say, smaller actors to meet certain very specific criteria. So how SME friendly is the access to public procurement? And what about construction? We all know almost, mostly populated by SMEs. So that access to public procurement, for construction SMEs being very strong local regional economy actors and not having a significant access means a missed opportunity for local employment and to keep competition going. I was very happy to hear, I think it was last week, Mrs. Jorna from the DG Grow, mentioning the fact that indeed today we still realize that, the flexibility provided in the EU public procurement is not sufficiently applied across member states. So this is the reality where we are. At the same time, another reality is that we are transitioning. We are transitioning towards becoming greener, becoming more digitalized. And that means that also public procurement is evolving. Green public procurement being used in public procurement. And the first consideration for us is, considering that we're already struggling in traditional public procurement, the first idea coming to our mind is this evolution towards more use of BIM in public procurement shouldn't create further obstacles for SMEs' access to public contracts. So we need digitalization of public procurement to keep a level playing field. So one of the considerations that might be a bit more practical is that we think that maybe BIM as a condition to execute a contract and not a criteria for the evaluation of the offer is maybe a more inclusive approach in the digitalization of procurement. And to conclude, something that is shared has been mentioned several times by our president from the Netherlands, who is a member of the stakeholder expert group on public procurement, is that maybe considering the reality of procurement, it's time to strategically rethink procurement and revise its concepts and to make it work and to make it more appealing again. And BIM use, the promotion of digitalization, will be a pivotal element in that reflection.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for sharing your reflections and the position of EBC. And now, Anina, to close this circle and this question, tell us, what does Building Smart think about the introduction of BIM in public procurement and how you see its benefits?
Well, I think, and even Building Smart Finland sees that the standardized use of open BIM in procurement through the whole life cycle of the built environment is very much needed, and we have to do it if we want to achieve our sustainability goals. So it's for reducing the carbon footprint and other sustainable measures in the built sector. Definitely need wide BIM adaptation in practical use and in our everyday lives. And you mentioned earlier that at the moment it's hard to get enough responses in tendering. I've noticed the same thing. And the challenge in how we implement BIM, how we procure BIM at the moment, is that every procurer is having different requirements, and that puts a lot of pressure on limited resources. So we need to standardize, firstly, information properties. We need to standardize how we use BIM, and we need to standardize how we procure for it. Then we can use our resources more smartly, and they can actually work on the projects, on the quality of the projects, on the quality of the deliveries.
Thank you, Anina. I see that it appears as a cross-cutting issue, the role of BIM for greening of construction. Of course, it's a it's a topic that we can simply not ignore. I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned all of this, is there like a best practice that you would like to bring up in this context?
Well, the best practice definitely would be to use Open BIM and firstly standardize properties in BIM models. But that's not enough. We need to have a plan how we standardize, how we use BIM. And I don't think anyone is there yet, but in Building Smart Finland, we are working on it.
Very good, thank you. So may I come back to you? What are the biggest challenges for engineers when we're speaking about BIM and public procurement? And maybe along the same lines, maybe you could share with us a good practice of collaboration.
Thank you. So, I mean, there are many challenges, and some of them have just been mentioned. Open standards and Open BIM was talked about earlier. But actually, and we're talking not just about BIM, but BIM in public procurement. So the biggest challenge for engineers is actually matching the expectations of the client with the reality. And actually, what we find is that we are asked to deliver BIM, which we can do. But I refer back to what I said earlier, which is that the public client doesn't always know why they want BIM. So an example of BIM is what you do with the data. So there are different kinds of data, and you have, for example, something called geometrical data, which is quite standard and it's quite easy and it's useful. And this is something that can be useful to the client. But then sometimes the client wants all of the data. So they'll say, well, we just want all the data. But the point of that is that you really need to know why you want it and what you actually want to do with it. And from an engineer's perspective, we can make data useful for you, but is it really what you need? And I give you an example, which is that projects have been delivered where very sophisticated systems were put in place because they were asked for, but then they're not used further down the line. So you have to have a need and a want to use a system that's put in place. Otherwise, you're spending a lot of money on a very sophisticated project, which in its use phase is not going to be used, and then it's not cost effective. And the example of good practice, I guess I'm going to come back to it later, is having this collaboration and collaborative contracting, so that the dialogue is there from the beginning. So the needs of the client are discussed, but not just with the design and the engineering phase, but also with the contractors and the users, so that everyone is involved in this process. And this is something I might come back to later, because we think it's the way to solve the expectations and needs against what's being delivered problem.
Thank you very much. These are very good points. Fernando, you spoke very nicely before about how you see procurement as a whole from the side of EBC. Is there any other additional BIM-specific challenge that micro-enterprises face when they have to participate in contracts for construction? And is there any good practice that you have observed in your network that work particularly well for smaller companies?
From our membership, we're having a very, let's say, we're putting a lot of attention on what is going on in Italy. And as you know, we would like to, it may be too early to tell about how our companies are going to adapt to the mandatory BIM that is set up over there. So maybe too early to tell, but what we know is about the concerns that we have. The concerns that we have is that considering that public procurement is already sometimes a complex process, that BIM brings an overburdening, if I may say so, creating a monopoly position and dependencies to other actors. There are concerns about let's say, a use of BIM becoming prescriptive in terms of commercial provisions, maybe not allowing a free choice of materials, because certain digital tools only allow to work with certain components. And there are concerns about the shared responsibilities with regard of the use of digital models. This is something that is also there. And concerns about, let's put it in a general way, that BIM might be used to further exclude traditional trades, traditional companies, and SMEs. So this is about the concerns. We are also very curious to see how the transition is going to happen. But this brings me to another message, that indeed SMEs, considering their resources, usually take time to adapt. We know that BIM becoming mandatory in public procurement will force us to adapt, but we also need a landing period, let's say a transition that is cautious enough of that reality, that we will need a time to adapt. Regarding best practices, I don't know if it's a best practice about BIM in public procurement, but a way to bring further an interest to BIM in construction SMEs is indeed to develop BIM-oriented methodologies, BIM tools that apply to the reality of their market. So that's why something that we are trying as EBC to do is to find innovation that is really tailor-made for construction SMEs in the renovation market, because those are two elements that should be taken into consideration if we want to have an interest and then of a real uptake of BIM in, let's say, everyday activities, but also in the context of the adaptation to a mandatory BIM process.
Yes, very, very interesting. And what I hear from you, Fernando and Sue, at the same time, is that we need to find the right project and the right scale of the project to experiment with BIM and other technologies. Thank you very much, Anina. Now, maybe you can not only tell us what challenges you see as building smart, but maybe give us your personal input, since you have seen challenges from both sides, both the procurers and the industry.
Microphone on first. So when I worked for the city of Helsinki as a project manager, I actually worked 3 years building up an alliance project where the designers and constructors and the owners work together. And for practical reasons, it's very smart to work in an alliance, but even in an alliance, there's still a change of culture that is really challenging. And it's also elsewhere with the use of BIM and adapting BIM, using BIM in practice, is that it's kind of clashing with our business models that we are used to. And that's the major challenge. So first, to standardize something, you need to do it for the whole industry, not just for 1 or 2 organizations, but you need to do it for the whole industry. And this is where the challenge thinking, oh, but now the company that's in competition with me will also benefit from this. So that is a major challenge that everybody needs to go through. But the thing is that once we get BIM standardized and the use of BIM standardized, we open up a whole new platform for new type of business within the construction, new services, new products, new programs. Everything is possible, but we haven't risen to that level yet. And also in the very practical use, if in an alliance, for example, is the everyday use of BIM. How does BIM show in how you push the project forward? And I have to admit, even though it was a BIM-based project, it was procured as a BIM-based project. I spent 3 years there. For the last year, I was reviewing plans and guiding designs and so on. I didn't open a BIM model myself even once. So there's still a lot of change that culturally needs to happen.
Indeed, because when we speak about BIM, we're speaking about processes, we're speaking about collaboration across all the construction professionals. And as you very rightly said, we cannot only digitalize one step of the process. And having said that, is there a message that you would like to pass to other construction professionals? Is there a particular part of the construction ecosystem that could help drive further the digital transformation? What do you need from other professionals in the sector?
We need to start thinking not to see BIMs just as software where we check if something is clashing, but we need to start seeing BIM as a tool to transfer, relay information so it doesn't get lost on the built environment life cycle. So kind of have to start seeing BIM even in a new way. And also there was a lot of talk about in the chat about the cost benefits of using BIM. And the reality right now is that, yes, at the moment, BIM-based design is more expensive than traditional design, but you're already making better projects, more efficient, cost-effective projects that are being built. So design is actually cheap at the moment, and we just need to get over the step of standardizing our information and standardizing our methods so we can rise to the next level and really get all the cost benefits out of using BIM in design and construction and even maintenance, the whole life cycle.
Thank you, Nina. Fernando, from your side, what you would expect from other construction professionals in order to drive further the implementation and adoption of BIM?
I will start with a message for our standardization experts. I think, standards have a big impact on professional processes. So what we need to ensure is that emerging standards are aligned with processes used by the SMEs who don't often have the sufficient resources to adopt these activities on their own initiative. So open standards, I think the importance of that component has been already highlighted. For my colleagues in the world of innovation, I would say that to develop innovation that is bringing, let's say, directly added value to the activity of SMEs, it is what we actually need to make digitalization happen. So what we need is BIM-based tools that are adapted to the building renovation market, that are easy to use in a way that it doesn't require a lot of training. When we're talking family business, companies with less than 10 people, spending 1 week, 2 weeks in training, it's a huge loss. We need those to be, of course, economically viable, so that they also understand this return on investment. But I do agree with Anina. We also need to work on the narrative as the construction value chain. BIM is a solution to the management of information along all life cycle phases of a building. So we need to better explain the long-term digitalization benefit also to my members, to my construction, but to everyone, so that we keep this collaborative thinking going on, because all in all, the digitalization will only happen if we all get on board.
Thank you, Fernando. And so you implied a lot of the challenges that engineers face by introducing BIM when maybe other professionals are not ready to uptake it. So maybe you wish to elaborate on that. What do engineers expect from other construction professionals in order to mainstream the use of BIM?
I really like what we've just heard from Finland there about thinking about the life cycle benefits. And actually, maybe we need to look at this the other way around, because we still tend to think about design and then construction and then use phase. But maybe we need to be looking at the end first to inform the beginning. So what do you want this project to achieve? What will it do in its use phase? What do you want it to be able to do? What and then work backwards. What data is needed, and then how is that built into the design? But from the partners in the value chain, what we would like to see is and I do sympathize with the SMEs and their predicament, but we have been talking about BIM now for a very long time. It's not new. So I personally have been talking about it for many, many years, and we still seem to be at the same place that we were. So I think that there is some investment needed, and of course there are some upfront costs, but if we're going to make it work, then we all need to have the tools to do it. We definitely need the open standards and the interoperability. But going back to the procurement process, and that's what this particular webinar is about. It's about public procurement. So from an engineer's perspective, it's the type of contract and the collaboration that goes with it. So we are very much in favour of collaborative contracting. We are very much in favour of early contractor involvement. And okay, it's probably a dream to think that you could already involve the facility manager at the beginning, at the procurement stage. But we need to have as much dialogue as we can so that we can explain both to the client and to everyone else and then to us how we're going to make this work together.
Thank you very much, Sue. And I think along these lines, maybe you can tell us also what you would expect this community of practice for BIM in public procurement to do, to deliver, how it can help also the construction professionals to carry on, as you said, and actually we can see some progress instead of keep talking about the same things. You already mentioned collaborating contracting. That was very interesting. What else you would like to see public procurers talk about?
Well, this community of practice is a fantastic idea, because what we can do with this is learn from each other. So this could be a mutual education process. It could help us as consulting engineers to understand what's involved in procurement and how a public procurer thinks, and learn about what the needs are from that side. And at the same time, we would be able to explain to a public client, this is what you're going to get from BIM. This is what you could have if you want to spend the most amount of money, this is what you could have. But in order to understand what you'll benefit from, it's a process of understanding what BIM can give you. And for us as engineers, this is where, again, we really need to know what you need. So I think this mutual education process and opportunity for dialogue will be great under this community of practice. So we welcome it.
Thank you very much, Sue. Fernando, over to you. What you would expect from this community of practice? What discussions would take place there to help construction SMEs?
I mean, a big problem with public procurement is the unequal application and enforcement of the rules at the national, regional, local level between different regions, different local authorities. So putting the people together in order to have that exchange that is extremely crucial, we welcome that, definitely. We, as EBC, we have been asking for further training on construction matters to public buyers in order that they understand better the sector in a way that they can then procure in a more realistic way. So we think this is a step in the right direction. We are going to deepen the exchange of best practices. So great. Also, another aspect that is linked is that this will also allow for exchanges, not only about BIM in public procurement, but public procurement in general. And we know we should have in the coming weeks guidelines, implementation guidelines on public procurement from the Commission. So I guess and hope that this will also be discussed, because there are many things that could be taken out of the current legislation on public procurement that are not applied and that could solve other issues in construction. I'm thinking about late payment. We know we're going to discuss late payment, and there is in the current provisions, let's say, flexibility to allow the direct payment to subcontractors. So, putting all these people together makes sense, and definitely it's welcome, and something that maybe should be considered for the future. I heard in your introductory remarks that you were conducting training as a European Commission of member states' public buyers. Could one of the next steps be that this community, COP, develops BIM in public procurement training courses for enterprises, so that we reach SMEs, we reach construction companies to increase their knowledge and update them on the legislative changes? Because if BIM becomes mandatory, we need accompaniment measures, especially for SMEs.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for sharing these ideas. I'm sure they will be very useful as we proceed with the implementation of this community of practice. And Anina, now over to you. What are your expectations and what you think we should have in this community of practice?
Definitely practices need to be developed together. We need the designers, the contractors, the procurers, the facility managers, everybody working together in developing all the standardization we need. And also, usually when you procure for BIM, like for a construction project or a design project, when you procure for BIM, actually what you put in the procurement about BIM is usually very short, and it's referencing to different design guidelines, construction guidelines, measurement guidelines that you have, how you want BIM to be used. But then you hit the issue when every procurer has their own guidelines and they're not always the same. And also procurers don't always understand what they are procuring. So definitely we need more standardization in that and more information in what you actually need and should ask for.
Thank you very much, Anina. Thank you very much, Sue, Fernando, and Anina, for sharing so much knowledge and constructive thoughts. I am sure that we will come back to you and get even more valuable input, because you have a lot to tell us as we proceed with the implementation of the community of practice. It was a pleasure to have you in this panel. And now I am passing over to Ivo right on time for him to summarize the meeting.
Many thanks, Electra. I think it has been a fantastic debate, live and also in the chat. We have seen really a lot of interaction, a lot of need for discussion and for bringing together these communities. I noted so many relevant keywords like realistic public procurement, or really understanding the needs of buyers, but also the need for mutual education, for dialogue, training, cultural change, best practices, need for guidance, and also relevant challenges, the need for use BIM maybe at the right scale of projects, innovation. And maybe on the last word, I think that what is really relevant and what history tells us is that technological progress cannot be certainly stopped. And I think that what is really important in this platform is to have the opportunity for these two communities to work together on how to exploit the opportunities of technological progress which are brought in by BIM. So just to conclude, a digital platform, as it was announced, will be available in February 2023. It aims really to develop collective intelligence, to share practices, to foster discussion on the topic of public procurement. It will include different layers, a website, a forum, possibilities to discuss, and also the possibility to create specifically communities of practice. One of this community of practice will be really about BIM and public procurement. And I think that today's webinar really confirmed the need for setting this. Also, as it was mentioned by my colleagues, a new initiatives on digitization of the built environment is coming up, which will include work on BIM. The work will link to the community of practice I was just referring earlier. Also, the transition pathway describing the vision and action to achieve a resilient green and digital construction ecosystem by 2030 will be published and presented in the first quarter of 2023. Today, we really brought together these communities of practice, the one on construction and the one on procurement. And it's important now that you will stay connected, and you can also register to our to the high-level construction forum database and also the public procurement newsletter. And I think that the link are being provided over the chat. So many thanks to you. Many thanks to all our speakers for their clarity and for the engagement, for the panelists, and also many thanks to Anita, Electra, and Peter to organizing this together with us. Many thanks.